Hey guys, welcome back. So today we need to talk about something that could shake the entire global economy in a matter of days. Not months, days. The Strait of Hormuz is once again at the center of a massive geopolitical showdown. President Donald Trump just rejected Iran's newest peace proposal, calling it totally unacceptable, while tensions in the Persian Gulf keep rising. Oil markets are nervous, militaries are on edge, and honestly, a lot of people are starting to wonder whether this fragile ceasefire is about to completely collapse. Now, if you're hearing Strait of Hormuz and thinking, wait, why does this tiny stretch of water matter so much? Here's the simple version. About 1/5 of the world's oil supply moves through that narrow waterway between Iran and Oman. It's basically one of the most important shipping choke points on Earth. If Hormuz closes, energy prices everywhere go crazy. Gas prices jump. Shipping costs rise. Inflation gets worse globally. Europe feels it. Asia feels it. The US feels it too. And right now, traffic through the strait is still severely disrupted because of the ongoing conflict between the United States and Iran. Some tankers are reportedly moving with trackers turned off to avoid becoming targets. That's the kind of atmosphere we're talking about. So what actually happened? Iran recently sent Washington a new peace proposal. Tehran wanted the U.S. to end sanctions, release frozen Iranian assets, and stop the naval blockade around Iranian ports. Iran also pushed for recognition of its influence over the Strait of Hormuz. In exchange, Iran reportedly offered limited concessions on uranium enrichment and nuclear activity. But Trump immediately shot it down. And honestly, from the American side, the reason is pretty obvious. The White House says the Iranian proposal didn't seriously address the nuclear issue. Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu both insist that any real peace deal must fully dismantle Iran's nuclear enrichment capability. No half measures, no temporary pause, full dismantling. That's the red line. Meanwhile, Iran is basically saying, we'll discuss nuclear questions later after the fighting and sanctions end. So you can already see the problem. Both sides want the other side to blink first. And this is where things get dangerous. Because technically, there's supposed to be a ceasefire right now. But it's the kind of ceasefire where everybody keeps firing warning shots and threatening escalation every other day. Just last week, U.S. destroyers moving through the Strait of Hormuz reportedly came under missile and drone attacks from Iranian forces. CENTCOM says American ships responded with self-defense strikes against Iranian targets near the strait. Trump later described those strikes as just a love tap, which is a very Trump way of describing military escalation. And now there are reports of renewed drone operations over Gulf states, which U.S. officials believe are linked to Iran. According to some analysts, Tehran may be trying to pressure oil markets and maintain leverage during negotiations. You guys can probably feel the broader pattern here. This isn't just about one peace proposal. This is about the balance of power in the Middle East. Iran wants recognition as the dominant regional power. The U.S. wants to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear threshold state. Israel wants Iran's nuclear infrastructure completely dismantled. Gulf Arab states are terrified of regional instability, but also nervous about getting dragged into direct conflict. China wants stability because it depends heavily on Gulf energy imports. Russia benefits whenever Western attention gets tied down elsewhere. Everybody has stakes in this thing. And honestly, one of the most fascinating parts of this crisis is China's role in the background. Trump is reportedly planning discussions with Beijing about Iran during an upcoming meeting with Chinese leadership. Why? Because China still has enormous economic influence over Tehran through oil trade and sanctions evasion networks. Washington knows that without Chinese pressure, it's hard to force Iran into major concessions. That's a huge shift compared to the old Middle East playbook. 20 years ago, these crises were mostly managed through Washington, London, maybe Moscow. Now Beijing is sitting at the table too. Another thing people are watching very closely is oil. The moment headlines came out about Trump rejecting Iran's proposal, oil prices jumped again. Traders are scared that a prolonged Hormuz disruption could create a real global supply shock. And remember, this is happening while many economies are already dealing with inflation fatigue after years of instability. And there's another uncomfortable reality here. Even if a peace deal eventually happens, trust between Washington and Tehran is basically non-existent right now. Iran believes the U.S. ultimately wants regime collapse. The U.S. believes Iran uses negotiations mainly to buy time and preserve nuclear capabilities. That distrust has been building for decades, going all the way back to the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the hostage crisis, sanctions wars, proxy conflicts, and the collapse of previous nuclear agreements. So when Trump says Iran's latest response is totally unacceptable, that's not just rhetoric. It reflects a much deeper strategic belief inside parts of Washington that partial agreements with Tehran simply don't work anymore. Now, does this automatically mean full-scale war is coming? Not necessarily. Actually, both sides still seem interested in avoiding an uncontrollable regional explosion. Iran knows a direct prolonged war with the U.S. could be devastating. The U.S. also knows another massive Middle East conflict would be politically and economically costly. So what we may keep seeing instead is this weird gray zone confrontation. Drone attacks, naval pressure, economic warfare, cyber operations, proxy fights, negotiations that never fully collapse but never fully succeed either. Basically, permanent crisis management. And honestly, that might be the new normal for global geopolitics in the 2020s. Not total peace, not total war, just endless high-stakes pressure. The big question now is whether someone miscalculates. Because in a place as tense as the Strait of Hormuz, one missile, one drone strike, one naval incident can suddenly force everybody into decisions they didn't originally want to make. And when energy markets, nuclear diplomacy, great power competition, and military escalation all collide in one tiny stretch of water, well, history tells us things can spiral very fast. All right, guys, that's the latest on the U.S.-Iran showdown and the growing tension around the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think this ends in a negotiated deal eventually, or are we heading toward a much larger regional conflict? Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.